to record it, so be prepared for that. I'm going to talk today just about tracking mistakes. I've seen these kind of come up a lot, and I guess it's one of those things that when I'm looking at a situation, I don't typically look at like something at this level where I think people might be making mistakes with tracking. I typically look higher, like is there a hormonal issue? Is there something else going on? But I rarely ever honestly look at something like tracking mistakes and maybe taking it back to the level of, is this individual like actually taking the steps they need to take when it comes to making sure that they're actually eating the calories they think they're eating? And so I figured I'd touch on this topic just because it's one of those things that we can easily look over. It doesn't really matter how advanced into the program we are, how long we've been tracking food. I think it's one of those things where, once again, this mistake can be made by anyone, including myself. There's things that I don't even think I need to track, and then I'll find myself curious about how many calories I'm actually consuming, and I'll track it one day, and I'll be like, oh wow, like this was completely different than what I had expected. So I figured I'd kind of touch on this. So why do tracking mistakes happen? Now, this is kind of important to talk about. First off, these mistakes are normal. These aren't something you need to be like thinking, wow, I'm a weirdo for not thinking about this stuff. It's completely normal to make. When we learn anything new, it's always going to be riddled with mistakes, whatever that new thing is. And even if you've been doing it for a while, there's always something that you could be forgetting or just taking advantage of. Maybe you're a little bit confident in what you're doing, so you're underestimating maybe how much you're consuming, or you start eyeballing things because, well, you've been tracking for so long now, you kind of generally understand how much you're eating. And so we let a little bit of our habits slip, which is okay. It's not designed to, dieting at least is not designed to have you track every single day for the rest of your life. It's just when we ought to be goal oriented as far as losing a certain amount of weight each and every week, or at least linearly losing weight, it does require a little bit of, I would say, observational data by tracking. And then just sometimes we just don't consider all the things that do have calories because there is so many of them. So the simple mistakes, and these are truly the ones I see most often when I'm trying to speak with individuals or talk to them about what might be going on. One of those simple mistakes is just not tracking oil. People use oil on everything. There's oil that we put on our pans. There's oil we put on our foods, or that is already in maybe some prepackaged foods. There's oil on the foods always when we go out to eat. They put oil on salads, or sometimes some of those pre-made salad kits that you get have olive oil included in them. And I even want to make this a point: the oil sprays, like the canola oil, which I don't recommend in general, but or the even olive oil sprays, the coconut oil sprays, if you look at the nutritional labels of one of those sprays, they say, literally, they say 0 calories on the back, but the serving size to what they're equating 0 calories to is like a fraction of a second of a spray. And there's still going to be calories. If you're putting something into your mouth that's not water, there's going to be calories within it. So that's one of the biggest things, right? People will put oils or butters or any of those things onto their pans, plates, whatever, and just not really consider it. And that's adding a ton of calories. We have to remember that fat is 9 calories per gram. And so it's one of the highest, it is the highest calorie macronutrient there is. And so if you're adding a couple grams here and there a day, so maybe let's say you're cooking 3 standard meals, you're putting a bit of oil on the pan or what have you, that's racking up to potentially just 9 grams of fat, which is not hard to do. That's just a small drizzle of olive oil. That's adding to something that equates to almost over 100 calories. So it's something we have to be careful for. Dressings, seasonings, and sauces. This is another big one. This is a great example. I have had a client for the longest time, and he was struggling to lose weight. We kept pulling back food. We kept putting more cardio into the situation. I was really considering like something's wrong. We had him go get blood work. It came back perfectly fine. And I was just like so perplexed by the situation. I'm like, what is going on? So at the end of a couple weeks, with us getting blood work, I had him start to take pictures of each and every one of his meals. And when I'd get them back, he'd always have sauce on them. And at first I didn't say anything because I was just kind of wanting to see how many meals he was actually doing this on. And lo and behold, it turned out to be every meal there was yum yum sauce on. And if you don't know what yum yum sauce is, it's a delicious kind of like, I think it's more of an Oriental sauce, but it's amazing. But every time we would pull food off, he would pour more of the yum yum sauce onto the food quantities that he did have. And this yum yum sauce, I mean, 15 grams of it, which is just a small dollop, is over 230 calories. And so he was probably putting 60 to, I would say, 100 grams of this stuff onto his food. So every time we were pulling that food to lose more weight, he was adding a significant amount more, so much so that he was even gaining weight in that process. So it's one of those things you really have to be cautious of. Any seasoning, any dressing, any sauce is all going to have calories within it. Even if those particular sauces say 0 calories, you always have to keep in mind, what is the serving size? Because the FDA has regulated it in such a way that if the calories or macronutrients are below, either in macronutrients a gram or calories below 5 calories, they can round down and easily say 0. It's a really easy thing that people can do. It really does cause a lot of issues within the general population, because people will think 0 calories and then it can be marketed as 0 calories. But if there's something going into your mouth that is not water or air, it has calories. Okay, that has to be said. So it makes it really difficult, because honestly, those are safe items to use, and I still don't care if people are using them. It once again is one of those things though, where if you're not losing weight and it seems like you should be, and it's like, what the heck is going on? Sometimes the first step to take and really start evaluating is how much of those sauces, how much of those drinks are you using, right? Another thing is, if you do enjoy a sauce so much so that you're willing to measure it out and use it, and leverage some of your calories for that particular sauce, are you actually tracking it, or are you just eyeballing the quantity, right? Is it something you're actually weighing, either with a cup or a tablespoon or teaspoon or a scale? Or is it just something you're eyeballing, say, yeah, that's probably about 15 grams? I would venture to say that with especially sauces, a lot of people have the tendency to just eyeball it and guess how much they're putting on in their MyFitnessPal. That's one of those things, right? If 15 grams of that yum yum sauce is 230 calories, a simple 25 grams could equate to over 100 calories more. So it wouldn't by eye make that much of a difference, but in caloric value, it would make a world of difference. Another thing I see as a huge issue is, and this is something we try to talk about right away in the beginning of the process with all the clients, but embracing the whole net carb thing. I don't understand this. It's a pop culture thing that came about a couple of years ago, quite a few years ago now, and it just really doesn't have a place in society. I get the idea behind it. I guess the idea is a little bit valid, but ultimately it's just giving you a way to say you don't have to track those calories. And if you're eating that many calories, those are calories. They don't just disappear into thin air. So the whole net carb thing is a really fancy way of saying, hey, you're going to be able to eat more calories, but since they're net carbohydrates, or since you're not tracking a certain portion of the carbohydrates, those calories don't count. It's still energy. It's still going into your body. Once again, if it's not water or air, it has calories, right? So that's one of those things that really bugs me, but it is important to bring up. And then also just kind of like eyeballing the sauces, eyeballing things like peanut butter, almond butter, nut butter. Those things have a ton of calories. They're sheer fat and very densely packed fat. So if you're grabbing a tablespoon with an actual tablespoon and putting that in your gullet and saying, yum, that was about a tablespoon of peanut butter, I would venture to say that's almost never accurate. I have not seen a person in my life estimate a tablespoon of peanut butter accurately. If you've actually done a tablespoon of peanut butter, or weighed it out, or actually taken a tablespoon, measured it, and put it on something, I'm going to be honest, it's quite abysmal how little out of a tablespoon of peanut butter or whatever associated butter is. It's very, very small. The same thing applies with oils and butters, like I was talking about before, when you're oiling a pan or putting some butter onto like a potato, or oiling something before you cook it. Like those things do add up. They do still contribute to overall caloric intake. So those are some of the more simple things, but the maybe not so obvious ones are quite a few. And some of these are kind of pain points for some people. So please don't let these things maybe push you the wrong way, but this is the facts, right? So reliance on qualitative measurements, and that's really just things like tracking with your palms or your thumbs. And I've recommended this to people in the past because generally speaking, if someone is way on the far end of being overweight, even just tracking in any capacity is going to help them. And if they're not tracking at all, I would argue that still tracking with palms and thumbs is effective. But once again, if you have a goal in mind and that goal is not being achieved, it's time to get overly analytical at what you're doing. And tracking with your palms and thumbs is a really, really bad way of being over analytical. In fact, I've personally, witnessing people have done this in person. I've never, ever seen anyone been able to equate a measurement with their palm or thumb equivalently 3 times a day. Like if they weigh a chicken breast or they measure a chicken breast with their palm, that chicken breast is never going to be the same size all 3 meals, or that carbohydrate is never going to be the same size all 3 meals. It's always going to be quite varied. Same thing applies to thinking calories on the weekend are not important, or just not caring enough to track those calories on the weekends. This is one of those things that can really, really throw off a lot of progress being made. And this is one of those things I'm going to be talking about too later on in this slide. But I have a lot of clients who will, generally speaking, do really, really amazing 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. And then Saturday and Sunday comes along, and then all of a sudden, their hard work from Monday through Friday that honestly wasn't probably comfortable for them to be doing gets kind of pushed over by the Saturday and Sunday. And we'll talk about that a little bit more, but this involves things like binge eating, or just eating the things you wouldn't, drinking a bit more alcohol than maybe you wouldn't typically, or just in general eating or doing less exercise or eating more than you would typically do on a weekday. This can have the potential to throw off all of a week's progress within a short 2 days. And so this is one of those things that I see as a big issue, because people just kind of go off the rails at times and stop tracking altogether. And that can really inhibit progress. This is another one, not tracking alcohol. It's not so obvious because, once again, this isn't something we see on nutritional labels, but every gram of alcohol has 7 calories in it. So even if you get like a lower calorie, not sweetened drink as an alcoholic beverage, maybe you just like vodka straight up. I don't know what everyone likes in here, but that is going to have calories in it, right? Each gram of alcohol has 7 calories per gram. So if you have, like, let's just say, like a pure form of alcohol, it's going, let's say you do like a shot of it, that little shot is going to be a ton of calories. And obviously, if you drink like a beer, it's only like, I don't even know, I don't drink, but like 7%, 14% alcohol. That's still a large portion of that drink. That drink's probably closer to 350 to 500 grams. And so you'd be looking at somewhere around the ballpark of like 20 to 30 grams of calories within each of those drinks, even though, and that's on the low side, right? That's still underestimating what could potentially be in those drinks. So it's not necessarily free calories when you go for the lower calorie alcoholic beverages, even though they're advertised as kind of a diet friendly alcoholic beverage. It's still not the case. Those alcohol beverages will have 7 calories per gram. And there's a whole nother mechanism behind that I'm certainly not going to get into right now, but how alcohol can inhibit beta oxidation, but that's a whole nother thing. This is another really big one, not tracking drinks. So things from Starbucks, things that you put into your coffee, sugar, milk, or any of that in coffee. These are the 2 really big culprits, honestly. Starbucks sells drinks that are well over 1,000 calories, and they're just a coffee. I am perplexed by this. Why a drink would be served that's more than someone's daily required intake of food. It blows my mind, but people will drink these and not consider how many calories are in it. And when you're drinking a drink that's more than a 72-ounce a soft drink from a gas station in calories, it's no wonder you're not progressing in the way you might have thought you would have. The same thing applies with sugar or milk and coffee. Oftentimes, once again, we don't measure these things, and they do add up quite dramatically. Some people don't track sodas, and this is including diet sodas. They do have calories. If you really look at the back of the labels and examine how many calories are in the back of a diet Coke, for example, there's calories there. There's at least 5 calories per serving. Gum has calories. There's 5 calories per sticks, and you can catch people eating 4 or 5 sticks a day. That will equate to a significant calorie burn-in. And then really just any flavored drink, from Gatorades to even sparkling water, those things are going to have calories in it. Now, how much of this is actually significant? Honestly, the diet sodas and the sparkling waters and the lower calorie to 0 calorie drinks, I'm not super concerned about. It's more the things that are really significant, like those Starbucks drinks, or just putting a little bit of sugar, honey, or milk into your coffee in the morning, or that soda that you drink. And the liquid calories that we're not maybe considering throughout the day, that can really, really contribute to caloric intake. And it seems like and feels like you're doing so much hard work because in volume, you're not consuming that much food. But when you're considering the liquids or sauces or other things you're using, you are actually consuming that much calories. So there's also, eating out that I know this is sort of a touchy topic, and I'm not here to say like you can't eat out, right? But this one is a really big culprit, and there's no way around it. There really isn't. You just have to be considerate of when you eat out. But the FDA has proven many times by just food examination that when people go out and look at like the nutritional labels at a restaurant, or let's just say you go to your local McDonald's and view the menu items and how many calories each menu item has, they've found like numerous times that I believe the number, and don't quote me on this, I did this in my nutritional studies class like a year ago, but it's like 65 to 70% of food-based organizations mislabel their nutritional calorie on any sort of food, from burgers to salads to whatever. And that's not underreporting. That's always that is underreporting. It's never overreporting. So they're underreporting how many calories are in one of their items. So if you're getting like a Qdoba burrito, for example, chances are you can inflate the calories within that burrito by 15 to 20%. The same thing applies to if you go to Chick-fil-A or McDonald's or Burger King. Like those items might have a flat calorie rates on the menu or online, but when you actually look at the reality of the situation, those calories are often misreported and underreported. And so you have to kind of assume you might be eating more calories. Let's say you go to a fancier restaurant. Cooks don't weigh their food. They might measure using like measuring devices, or have like a standard serving size, maybe like something like a spoonful, but they're not weighing their food, and it's certainly never perfect, right? It's not like an algorithm that's completely laid out for them. It's just like, hey, put this much in here roughly and this much in here. And so there's really like, you can guess how much calories are in those things, but it can be wrong by up to 40%. Like you can add an extra 300 calories real quick just with an extra drizzle of olive oil. And the cooks don't mind that, right? They care that the food tastes good. They don't know you're trying to track calories. So the accuracy of the caloric intake thing, it doesn't really bother them. So you do have to genuinely consider those things. And I promise that I don't mean to deter anyone from eating out when I say this. I'm just, if you're going to eat out, I would encourage you to, one, eat modestly, and two, really consider, I'm probably going to be overeating on calories, even if when I track those calories, it says I'm on track. You might be over 10, 20, even 30% as far as guessing how many calories are in that item. It could be that much wrong. And so that alone could throw you off for the week. And then here's just kind of a good graph I just made, talking about weekly averages. And I did talk about this before, but this just kind of plays the point with the whole weekend thing, right? And maybe not tracking on the weekend. And we could use the same model for something like a 200 extra calories a day from a sauce or something like that. Let's say an individual's calorie limit is 1,840 calories, I believe I put in for this one. And that has them losing like about 2 pounds a week, we'll just say generically. The individual in the light blue will certainly be losing about that 2 pounds a week. He varies in calories up and down by 50 to 100 or so. But generally speaking, he stays on average. In this average, if you actually calculate it over the week, with his varied caloric intake would be 1842. So that's accepting like some caloric variance there within 100 calories. But then you have the not accurate individual, which is in the dark blue. Now they do really good Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, but Friday, Saturday, Sunday, they have fluctuations of about 500 calories. And then on Saturday, they had a couple extra drinks, assuming, and they bumped their caloric intake up about 200 more calories than even in excess. So their average caloric intake was 2002 calories. So that individual stops losing weight over the week, and all that hard work they did on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday gets washed out by that Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. It's why it's really important to look at how much calories are you consuming every week versus every day. And even if you wanted to really extrapolate Monday or monthly, but this is more of the important thing, what are your average calories throughout the week versus intraday? And like I said, this can be applied to with sauces. Let's say you apply 200 calories more, Monday and Wednesday because you added a little bit more olive oil to create some flavor. Well, you can just consider your average caloric intake in that sense closer to that 2000 mark. And maybe that might be why you only lost 0.4, 0.3 pounds as opposed to a whole pound that you were hoping for, was because that extra drizzle or the extra seasoning of whatever the case might be. So, I mean, generally speaking, this is kind of what the presentation was about. It's nothing crazy. It's nothing radical. I just wanted to kind of maybe elucidate some of the things I see most commonly as mistracking and some of the things that we can easily look over, considering how many different variables we are looking at. Sometimes we forget to go back to the basics and just ask ourselves, are we really tracking correctly? So with that, I will kind of open the floor up. Does anyone have questions? Does anyone have concerns or need help with anything?
Kolton, this is Renee. I will probably send you pictures once I get back. I don't know if you knew, but I'm having puppy issues.
Yeah, I did. I think I heard you say something about that.
Yeah. So once we kind of get over that stress, I'll probably send you pictures to get me kind of on track.
Okay, absolutely.
I don't think I'm way off, but I might be. I mean, I use a lot of Pam spray.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a better one to use?
Honestly, there's really not, and that's kind of the unfortunate thing. I would say like the non-stick pans are a great alternative because they don't the Teflon pans or whatever, but they actually have this is just me being hypercritical or whatever you might want to call it, but they have a lot of arsenic within that non-stick material, that Teflon. So I don't personally vouch for those. I do use I don't like seed oils, so I don't try to get Pam, but I use typically coconut oil. Like they make spray coconut oil, but it's all going to have calories in it. And the best you can do is just assume that if you're spraying your pans or you're spraying stuff, it's probably going to have a good 9 to 20-ish calories extra in it. And this isn't like something, and I mentioned this in the very beginning, if you don't have to be this hypercritical always. It's just something where if you notice that progress just really stops and you have yourself scratching your head, like, what the heck's going on? It might be worth investing to look into what else is being thrown into your food as far as calories that you might not be so considerate of, because oftentimes we're all over the place with our life and mindset and where we're looking at. So it's just kind of worth it to maybe take a few steps back before assuming that we need to drop more calories or assuming that maybe something health related is wrong. That's just kind of my opinion. So
right. I totally agree. And this was perfect, spot on for me tonight.
yeah.
I actually even made an appointment with my doctor for next week because I'm like, what in the heck is going on? Because I think you and I have been working really well together and nothing's moving.
Right. Yeah. And this is like one of those things, right? And it's difficult online coaching. I can't be there at your house, like watching you make every meal, but it's a real thing. So yeah, they do add up. And the funny thing is I coach people to bodybuild as well, and they have to get really, really, really lean for their shows. And when they get that lean, like they're hungry for anything. So they'll use gum as like one of their scapegoats. And, I've
Sure.
had individuals who eat, 10 to 20 pieces of gum a day. And that's a lot of calories. That's 100 calories worth of gum. And that can throw someone out of a caloric deficit, which would have them losing weight just from that alone. So even just considering those small things is sometimes really important to do.
And just one more thing, if you want me to get another set of bloods, just message me which bloods you want, since I'm going back to her
Yeah, I would love to do that. Are you going back next week?
on Thursday.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I'll shoot you a message for sure.
Okay. Yep.
Any other questions? All right. Well, I do really appreciate everyone for listening and tuning in. If you do have any questions, I think everyone in here is my client, so please text me. As always, communicate with me. I love the communication that everyone here gives me and is willing to talk to me. It means the world to me that you guys care so much about your progress and care so much to give me insight on your progress too. So I hope everyone has a beautiful, beautiful Wednesday night, and all goes well this week, and we can check in on Sunday or Monday with some kick-ass progress. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.